Drafting an Alabama player in the first round is nothing new for Howie Roseman, but drafting a linebacker in the first round, now that was a first. What do we think of the Jihaad Campbell selection? We'll get into it coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Happy draft day, everybody. The Philadelphia Eagles have selected Alabama linebacker Jihaad Campbell with the 31st overall pick, trading the 5th rounder in the 164th overall spot to move up one spot to take Campbell. Today's episode, recapping that pick, is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions do apply. So yeah, I mean, should you be surprised at all the Eagles took an Alabama player in the first round? No. Howie Roseman's MO since the rebuild of 2020 began was taking Alabama and Georgia players in the first and second round. Devontae Smith, Landon Dickerson, Tyler Steen from Alabama, Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Nakobe Dean, Jordan Davis, Keely Ringo from Georgia. Like, this is the plan. It helped him get to a Super Bowl in 2022. It helped him win a Super Bowl in 2024. That part of this selection, trading up for Jihaad Campbell from 32 to 31, should be nothing new, and neither should the trade up. Howie Roseman always makes trades. It sounded like he was even trying to get up earlier into the 20 range of the first round. But what should surprise you is that in the same offseason that Howie Roseman gave a contract extension, a top 5 contract extension to Zach Bond, an inside linebacker. In that same offseason, he also extended a running back to a historic deal. And now he's drafting another linebacker in the first round. I mean, that part of this is absolutely incredible. On top of last year in the draft, taking 2 cornerbacks in the first 2 rounds, when before that, he had only taken 1 corner in the top 2 rounds ever. Howie Roseman, I mean, this is proof. What more proof do you need that he is just always willing to adjust his strategy? And I absolutely love it. Vic Fangio's defense, it calls for an added emphasis on these kinds of guys. Somebody like Jihaad Campbell, rangy, lengthy, and explosive linebacker that can cover a lot of space. That's who the Eagles are getting in the 21-year-old Alabama prospect. Last year had 5 sacks on the edge as an inside blitzer, 12 tackles for a loss, 117 tackles. This is a really interesting pick for me, and I do think it makes sense also from a best player available perspective. I think he was by far and away the best player left on the board. Other teams are trying to get to that 31st overall pick for him. The Eagles do trade away a 5th round pick, giving up, it was 164 to move up that one spot. I really like the move. And this is a kind of player that I was calling for, a positionless jack-of-all-trades kind of role player for this defense that already has so many holes filled. How do you add an impact player early on in the draft? You get a guy that can do a little bit of everything, a versatile player that, again, he's rangy, super long arms for a linebacker. He's got crazy explosiveness to get sideline to sideline. He can cover a lot of space. That's really good for his coverage upside. That's really good for his ability to pursue the backside of plays. Against the run, against mobile quarterbacks, you need this kind of speed. And especially in a Vic Fangio defense where linebackers, they're asked to do even more, and you got to cover a lot of space. If you're an inside linebacker for a Vic Fangio defense, you need guys like Zach Bond. You need guys like Jihaad Campbell. And that's, again, what I love about this pick is Howie Roseman, he normally has a set core fundamental belief that you take the trenches with most of your first and second round picks. But he also understands best player available. He understands the league changes. He understands that his coaches changes, and they need different things. And Vic Fangio needs this kind of player. And again, that's Howie Roseman's superpower. It's not the trading. It's not the free agent signings. It's not the creativeness. It's, I think, the open-mindedness and the willing to adjust is really what makes him special. And this pick just continues to cement that fact. Jihaad Campbell is 6'3", 235 pounds. Like I said, an elite wingspan, elite speed for his position. 5 sacks last year. He can rush the passer coming downhill as a blitzer. He actually was recruited to Alabama as an edge rusher, but there was so much depth with the Crimson Tide defensive line that he moved inside. This is an interesting player where it's right now he's a jack of all trades but a master of none, but he has crazy potential. Like, he has elite inside linebacker potential, and I think even if they use him more on the edge, he could eventually be an elite pass rusher. And that's the kind of positionless player that I really wanted for this defense, because number one, so many holes already filled on this defense. Like, there's not a lot of starting opportunities, right? So I wanted just that versatile kind of mismatch type of, a matchup type of player that Fangio could say, this week I want to use you more as a rusher on the inside, as a blitzer. This week I want to use you more as an edge rusher. Okay, actually, your potential is as an inside linebacker. Your potential is as an edge. He can use Campbell's versatility while figuring out what he does best, like he did. And that's what Fangio does, is he figures out what a player does best and he puts him in a position to succeed. He saw Zach Bond as an inside linebacker, and he turned him into an all-pro inside linebacker despite his career being an overhang edge rusher. He saw Cooper DeJean be an outside corner in Iowa, but say, no, you're actually a nickel corner at the next level. Cooper DeJean in his rookie year played at an all-pro level and was a Rookie of the Year finalist. Campbell, again, sometimes you got to be concerned, is a player versatile because he can do everything great, or he's not a master of any one thing, so we kind of have to use him in different spots. That's sometimes something that concerns people about versatility. I think it's why teams let Cooper DeJean fall down the board last year, because they didn't know exactly how to use him. But I think those players are valuable. I want that versatility on defense, and I think as long as you have the right coach to develop him, to season him at the right spot, that he can become that full-time player for you as well at one position. And I think Vic Fangio is going to turn him into, I think he's going to be a really good stand-up inside linebacker at the next level. I think he could be like when Devin White was good, not with the Eagles last year, but when Devin White was an all-pro during the 2020 run for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for their Super Bowl, just the way he was able to come downhill, just cover so much space, sideline to sideline in such a short amount of time. Like, I think that's who Jihaad Campbell can be. But for now, Fangio needs to figure that out. Don't overload Campbell's plate. Figure out what he does best, and then start using him as a versatile, all-around Swiss Army knife for this defense. So I think it makes sense in the short term, is that versatile piece. I think it makes sense in the long term, because also when you consider the fact that Nakobe Dean is in a contract year, he's going to miss time this year with an injury that was pretty serious. He has suffered a good amount of injuries in his career with Philly, and the fact that I just can't see them giving two linebackers top 10 contract extensions. I think Nakobe Dean, he's probably done in Philly after this year. So it also makes sense from a need perspective at inside linebacker. So I love the move. I think Jihaad Campbell is a really interesting prospect. I think from a best player available perspective, I understood it. From a potential perspective, and he's also just what the Eagles love. Like, he's only 21 years old. He played at a great school. He's versatile. He's fast. He's athletic. A 9.8 raw athletic score. Like, top tier athlete for his position. It's everything the Eagles like in a prospect. So even though it's a linebacker on day one, and Howie Roseman normally never does that, it shouldn't surprise you that he took a elite athlete that's versatile and is good at getting to the quarterback, and he played at Alabama. So in that way, the Jihaad Campbell pick, it's like shocking, but not shocking at the same time, if that makes sense. And I'm really excited about it because, again, this was the kind of player that I wanted for Vic Fangio, is that really good coverage box player. Maybe he's a safety linebacker hybrid. I like that Campbell's like a linebacker edge hybrid. And now you develop him because the floor is lower than other prospects. Like then if you would have went with a Donovan Ezereku with that 31st or 32nd overall pick, but the ceiling is through the roof. And I love to bet on traits. And man, does Campbell have the traits to be an edge rusher if he wants to be. That's what, again, Alabama recruited him to be. He can be a inside linebacker stud at this level. Vic Fangio is the guy I trust to bring this kind of player in. I think the Eagles trust him as well, and it's why they took a chance on Campbell. And worst case scenario, maybe he ends up just being a jack-of-all-trade, master of none, but you can use him in a lot of different ways. And the Eagles defense still has so many long-term core pieces in place that Campbell doesn't feel like he's a make-or-break pick. Like, this was almost in a way a luxury pick that you kind of needed short-term and long-term, but in a way you had the opportunity to take this chance because of the way your roster is set up, because of the coaching, and because of the way the board fell. So I really like it. Is it the Quinyon Mitchell move of last year for me? No. That would have been James Pearce. That was my dream pick. But Jihaad Campbell is a really interesting selection for me, and I'm really, really curious to dive into his film on a much deeper level. All right, guys, coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. So Howie Roseman did trade up. Only one spot from 32 to 31. But before he selected Jihaad Campbell with that pick, did he try to trade up for somebody else earlier in the first round? We'll get into it coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast, recapping the Eagles' first-round pick of Alabama linebacker Jihaad Campbell. It's sponsored by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Well, between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track, and that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and start building your wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDON, for half off of your first year. And guys, today's show, we are also sponsored today by Gametime. Gametime helps you get tickets a whole lot easier. There's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game, for instance. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena, and with Gametime, you can be part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Gametime makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, and even when demand is sky high, prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. The Philadelphia Eagles traded up from the 32nd overall pick to 31, giving up the 164th pick in the 5th round to select Alabama linebacker / edge rusher, I just think a Swiss Army knife, in Jihaad Campbell. Again, 5 sacks in 2024, 12 tackles for a loss, 117 tackles overall. Again, I don't know what he's going to be at the next level. I project he'll be an inside linebacker. I think that's where Fangio will have him focus early on because they need him there with Nakobe Dean's injury. That's where he played at Alabama the majority of his career there. I think that's where he projects the best position to play at the next level. Let Fangio figure it out, though, develop him, and then you start to use him as a versatile player that sometimes is on the edge, sometimes is on the inside. You're blitzing him a lot. I think the potential of this player on this defense, it's something that you didn't really have with a lot of other guys where you could just move him all around the formation. He could almost be your Micah Parsons in a way, but he plays more inside linebacker. But that, kind of a poor man's in this draft, a Jalen Walker, right? So I think that's the kind of guy he is, and that's really exciting to me because you guys heard me on the show talk about it a lot over the last few weeks. I want a positionless, versatile piece that Vic Fangio can use in a creative way because Fangio is really good at that kind of stuff of using players in different ways, maximizing their strengths. He did it with Zach Baun last year. He did it with Jalix Hunt. That's another good example of this, a player that was new to his position that worked out. Zach Baun, of course, is the obvious example of this, but he was really good at that, and I think that's why the Eagles took a shot on Jihaad Campbell. So it makes sense in just so many ways. Best player available, a potential need after next year. I don't know if Nakobe Dean's going to be in Philadelphia. He can help rush the passer, and you lost a lot of pass rushers this offseason. He's 21 years old. He's an elite athlete from Alabama. It's just such an Eagles pick. Even though he's a linebacker and they just don't take linebackers early in the draft, I'm not surprised at all that this was the selection. Not at all. But before the Eagles did trade up for Jihaad Campbell, did they try to trade up for somebody else? According to Jordan Schultz, we were all tracking this, so you're probably not surprised I'm talking about it. It sounded like the Eagles were talking to the Green Bay Packers about that 23rd overall pick, which the Packers eventually just stayed put. They took Texas wide receiver Matthew Golden. It also sounded like the Vikings were fielding calls for the 24th overall pick. They ended up sticking and picking, taking Ohio State guard Donovan Jackson. The Rams traded down with the Atlanta Falcons, who took James Pearce, my guy. The Rams got an extra first-round pick from Atlanta in 2026, and the Giants moved up to pick 25 to take Jackson Dart. So we know all those teams were looking to move down. 2 of them did. 2 of them stayed put. And we know the Eagles were calling those teams about trading up. So the questions are, who was it for and what happened? I think, and I don't know if it was for Jihaad Campbell. Maybe it was because they did trade up to 31 for Campbell. So maybe they just knew teams were trying to call about his services, and it did sound like that was the case for the 31st overall pick, so maybe they were trying to get up for him. But I think there is a chance. Maybe my heart wants to believe it over my head. I think they were going for James Pearce. I really do. But then when you add into the fact of the matter that the Falcons are trading future first-round picks for this guy, and you got the Giants in this market as well, and they want a quarterback, so they're willing to spend a lot more than probably you are for a linebacker, an edge rusher. They gave up a second-round pick this year, a third-round pick this year, and a third-round pick next year. I think the Eagles wanted to trade up, but they weren't trading a 2 and 2 3s for anybody. They weren't trading a future 1 for anybody. When your roster's as set up as it is right now, you could trade a 1 for an A.J. Brown type of player, right? But you're not trading a 1 for, even for me, as much as I love James Pearce, you're not giving up an extra first-round pick and swapping picks this year on day 1 for anybody in this class. So I'm glad Howie Roseman did not do that he didn't trade a 2 and 2 3s. And that's just the fact of the matter. You know, the Eagles, I think they wanted to trade up for a player, but it takes 2 to tango. And sometimes you just don't get the deal done. Sometimes you just like the price, the asking price isn't worth it. We've been lucky the last 4 drafts where it's gone the Eagles' way a lot. Getting to trade up for Devontae Smith and having it work out. Getting to trade up for Jordan Davis and getting to trade up for Jalen Carter and Nakobe Dean even in the 3rd round of 2022. Not having to trade up for Quinyon Mitchell last year. Trading up for Cooper DeJean. They've been really lucky that the board has fallen their way a lot like it did today at a certain point, and that teams were willing to accept their offer. But this year, I think you saw the reality at times in the NFL is you can try to make a deal all you want, like the Eagles were, whether it was for Jihaad Campbell or James Pearce, or maybe it was for Malaki Starks, who I'm so annoyed he's in Baltimore, by the way. Now they have Kyle Hamilton and Malaki Starks, 2 guys that I really wanted for the Eagles in the last 4 draft classes, but I digress. Sometimes the Eagles, you try, and it just doesn't work. Again, it takes 2 to make a deal, and the asking price from other teams that wanted quarterbacks that were desperate enough to take a pass rusher by trading a future first-round pick, like you're just not going to compete in that market. But I really like the plan B or the alternate plan. You only had to give up a 5th-round pick to move up 1 spot to get a guy in Jihaad Campbell who I didn't think was going to be available. Like, somebody asked me before the show, talk about if there were any prospects you would have taken over Campbell. I personally would have taken Nikem Nwori ahead of him, the safety out of South Carolina. But I like this move over Donovan Ezereku. I think there's a lot of pass rushers left on day 2, and Campbell's kind of that guy as well. He had 5 sacks last year. He does have edge rusher experience. He could play that spot. So I do think the plan B was really nice. I think they got great value for Campbell at 31. Like I was saying, I thought he was going to be a top 15, at least a top 20 pick. I didn't think there was any way he got past. I'd say like the Rams at 26 was the latest I thought he was going to go. In my official final top 32 mock draft for the first round, I had Campbell, I believe, going to the Rams at 26. So, no, I wouldn't have taken, the only guy I would have taken ahead of Campbell is Nwori, and I do think that this was a great alternative plan to whatever the Eagles were trying to do, trading up into the 20s. I think it was for James Pearce or Malaki Starks, but maybe it was for Campbell. I'm curious what Howie Roseman says about that. He probably won't tell you since he's taken a player now. He's not going to say, oh, yeah, I was going for somebody else. But I'll predict it was for James Pearce. And then a team like the Falcons said, we want to pair him up with Jalen Walker so bad, which, by the way, is a sick combo in Atlanta on the edge now, that they were willing to give up a first-round pick. So I think I would have loved that. I would have loved to get James Pearce, but I wasn't trading a 1. I wasn't trading a 2 and 2 threes. And I'd much rather have the outcome. I'd rather have Jihaad Campbell for a 5th than James Pearce for the asking price it was going to take. That was kind of a weird trade. I don't think I've ever seen a team deal a future 1 for a pick in the 20s on day 1. So that was really interesting, but I get it. James Pearce is that kind of talent in the Falcons. You got Jalen Walker and James Pearce on the edge now. I think they won today's draft. But I think the Eagles came out as big winners as well with Campbell. And the labrum, he had the torn labrum, had surgery on it. It looks like he'll be ready to go for training camp, so I'm not worried about the health either. I think this was a slam dunk draft pick. Now, what do they do moving forward? Because the Eagles still have a lot of work the next 2 days. They did give up the 164th overall pick, but they still have 2 5th-rounders on day 3. They have a 4th-round pick. They've got a 2nd and a 3rd tomorrow. What's the plan now that you took this versatile Swiss Army knife in Jihaad Campbell, who's, I think, going to play more inside linebacker than anything else? What positions should they focus on next? We'll get into it coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. Brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. As a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in just one place. Post Your Job, LinkedIn's new feature, can help you write job descriptions and then quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip. Add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach to qualified candidates. No wonder 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find quality hires at a high level. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. All right, so the Eagles trade up for Jihaad Campbell with the 31st overall pick. The Chiefs did a deal with the devil, allowing their enemy, the Philadelphia Eagles, to move up one spot to get their guy. Overall, I love it. I'll say this is an A pick. Ideal outcome. Was he my favorite player on the board? No, there were a lot of other guys that I would have preferred, but Jihaad Campbell was great value at 31. I think by far the best player available. He's the versatile piece that I wanted for this defense. I think he fills a need, both short-term and long-term, at stand-up linebacker next to Zach Bond, with Nakobe Dean potentially out from Philadelphia after next year. He's young. He's an elite athlete. He's the modern-day linebacker. He's what Fangio needs. Like, the arm length is crazy. You guys know I love wingspan for players like this. That's what I'm looking for, and that kind of speed. I mean, look at some of the range they have at the 2nd and 3rd level of this defense now with Cooper DeJean, Zach Bond. You got Jihaad Campbell now in the box, Sidney Brown in the box, who's just a guy that plays with his hair on fire. The Eagles have some crazy people in the box on the 2nd and 3rd level. Reed Blankenship as well, Quinyon Mitchell and Keely Ringo. They've got length, size, and speed on this defense on all 3 phases, and it's really, really exciting to think about. Like, I love this defense. I think Vic Fangio is going to have a field day with Campbell and just molding this defense in year 2 with all these guys getting 1 year older and developing even further. That's the crazy part, is this defense hasn't scratched the surface. And they were the number 1 defense in football last year that won a Super Bowl and stopped a three-peat, stopped a dynasty. So you add Campbell to that. I totally get why the Eagles moved up for him. What's the plan now, though? The 64th overall pick is their next selection on day 2, unless they do try to trade up in the 2nd round or trade down. They've got the 96th overall pick as well tomorrow night in the 3rd round. So what would I do? Well, today's pick, it kind of filled the pass rusher need a little bit, although I think Campbell will mostly play inside linebacker. So they filled a hole that I didn't think they were going to address. Like, I thought they were taking a edge rusher, a defensive tackle, or a safety, or a tight end, or I thought even a receiver was an option before a linebacker. But they did go that route with Jihaad Campbell, so what's next? I would like them tomorrow, if they have 2 selections. I want one of 2 positions taken. With one of those picks, I want a safety or tight end. Doesn't have to be both. I'm realistic. There's no way I shouldn't say no way at this point with Howie Roseman. You never know. I think there's very little chance that they're going to go linebacker, safety, tight end with their first 3 picks. Like, no chance. They're going to take a lineman. I want an offensive lineman or a pass rusher. So that's 1 pick. And then the other pick, give me a safety or a tight end. So yeah, that kind of leaves it open. That's 4 positions that I listed. But I want a pass rusher or an offensive lineman. Just give me somebody in the trenches tomorrow, like an actual trench player that's not a tweener like Jihaad Campbell. And then give me one of those immediate needs for this year. Address tight end or safety. I think there's a better chance it's tight end because I think this team is signing Justin Simmons next week. It's just a hunch, but I think Justin Simmons is going to be an Eagle next week. So I think prediction. So I want those 4 positions, 2 of those 4. What is my prediction? I think they're going to take a tight end with that 3rd round pick, and I think they're going to go with an offensive lineman in the 2nd round. I think they're going to try to maybe trade up for an offensive lineman or a tight end in round 2, and then the other position they don't take is round 3. I think they actually go offense tomorrow. But I would be surprised if it's pass rusher as well because their pass rusher is deep, and there's a lot of guys still on the board. This is my top 32 big board that I made, as you guys saw me talk about on yesterday's show. We still got Donovan Izareku from Boston College on the board. I can't believe he fell out of the 1st round. We still have Ohio State tackle Josh Simmons on the board because of that injury. I think he might be the most talented tackle in this draft. So he's still available. So Izareku and Simmons, those are your 2 best players left. I don't know if they're going to fall to you, though. You've got Kevin Winston Jr., my favorite player from Penn State, the safety. Xavier Watts, the safety from Notre Dame. Going back to pass rushers, Nick Scorton from Texas A&M. You've got Darius Alexander on the defensive line from Toledo still available. Trey Amos from Ole Miss, the corner. He's still there too. Like, I could still see this team taking corner. Tennessee defensive tackle Omar Norman Lott is on the board. Elijah Arroyo, the tight end from Miami. You got UCLA edge Femi Adejo, who we know the Eagles love. TJ Sanders is on the board. Mason Taylor. Like, there are so many guys. Another Georgia guy. Are we going to go Bama, Georgia? Tate Rutledge, the guard out of Georgia. If that's the pick, this is the most Howie Roseman draft of all time. There's a lot of options. I would say they go offensive line, tight end, though. That's my prediction. I want them to take a tight end or safety with 1 pick and then give me a trench player with the next. But again, as I've said in previous shows, this year, it's house money. Howie Roseman has done such a good job setting this team up both for the short term and the long term at pretty much every spot on both sides of the ball that they can pretty much take whatever they want. Like, they today had the luxury of taking kind of an unknown with Jihaad Campbell. Who knows what he's going to be at the next level? They had the luxury of taking a upside, traitsy, ceiling type of player rather than the floor. And I think Campbell's an exciting watch. And I can't wait to see what they do tomorrow. Like, this was a great start to the draft. I'm going to dive into some of his tape. I want to talk to my guy over at Locked On Bama, really see what Campbell's all about, and then try to hear from Howie Roseman as well, who talked to the media. Just kind of get his inside look at this draft pick. But overall, that's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Eagles, recapping the Eagles' first-round pick of Alabama linebacker Jihaad Campbell. What year am I living? What universe am I living in that the Eagles signed a linebacker to a top 5 deal this year, drafted another one in the first round, traded up for one, oh, by the way, signed a running back to the biggest running back contract of all time. They drafted 2 corners in the first 2 rounds last year. Like, did somebody kidnap Howie Roseman? It might be that beer can that hit him on the parade float. Just totally changed his brain activity. Signing linebackers and running backs, trading up for linebackers in round 1. Unbelievable. But I'll take it because you guys know me. I wanted Howie Roseman to finally address these positions at least for a year or two, just once. Like, most of your heavy investments can be in the trenches, but just take a couple premier assets into these spots. He's no longer settling at any position, and I would love to thank Vic Fangio for that. I think he has really helped change Howie's mindset at some of these positions. All right, guys, that's going to do it. Lou DiBiase signing off. Thanks, as always, for making us your first listen each and every day. Thanks so much for downloading, watching, and listening, and let's go Birds. We'll see you for day 2. Fly, Eagles, fly.